Dead at night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken bats, but heart steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene. Streets buzzing like a machine. Grimace from the shadows, chills on my spine. Past haunts, the future shine. Comebacks in the night, keep dreams alive. Fighting tooth and nail just to survive. City's heartbeat echoes in our chant. Grit and glory is all we want. Brooklyn to Queens, hear the roar. From laughter to blood in every scar. Living legends made on this ground. From silence we scream, make a sound. Rising high, falling low, repeat again. Cycles of the game, addicted to the pen. Graffiti tales, spray on the wall. Mets saga, forever stand tall. Rivals smear, but we push on.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to episode 9 of Mets Hot Stove. Hopefully everybody had a good Thanksgiving, and the duo's finally back after a long road doing solo videos and solo shows. We're finally back with another Mets Hot Stove a week before the MLB winter meetings. Let's say what up to Chris and get started. How you doing, buddy?
Oh, it's always good to be back, Rob. I'm still on travel. I'm still working out of hotel rooms, etc. You know how it goes. But you know what? We're here. We're back. We're better than ever. And we got some Mets news to talk about, especially with the winter meetings coming right up. And just want to say, I hope everyone had a great holiday with their friends and family and, getting ready to get back into the swing of things of this off season. We got a lot of stuff to talk about in a little bit of time. Appreciate everyone being here with us. Make sure to subscribe to both channels, our usual shameless plugs. Hit those thumbs ups on both of our streams, both on my channel and on Rob's channel. And let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And it's been a lot of weird Soto news when it comes to possible offers, possible finalists, possible favorites. And that's going to be our first topic of today. But make sure you hit that like button, guys, and subscribe to both of our channels. And if you're on X, please head over to YouTube, click on that link, and subscribe to the channel as well, as we're doing Mets Hot Stuff throughout the offseason. And we're already up to episode 9. How crazy is that? 9 episodes in, and the World Series was basically a month ago. So, we're getting full bore into the winter meetings, as we'll definitely get into the winter meetings preview a little bit later in the show. But the Juan Soto discussion is basically keeping everything else stagnant, right? It's the big name position players aren't going to sign until Juan Soto signs, because a lot of the guys that are available, like Santander, like Pete Alonso, hinges on who possibly gets Juan Soto and who doesn't. And that's why I think a lot of people are continuing to get frustrated with this whole process with the big time free agent. And Juan Soto is the biggest free agent on the market. But if he signs prior to the winter meetings, which I think both of us probably think he will, as we'll dive deep into that a little bit more. But what are your thoughts about the Juan Soto situation? Right, we both want Juan Soto, right? We made that abundantly clear, as some people don't want him because of the price tag, but we all know the Mets aren't gonna sign Juan Soto, and that's it for their offseason, because that would be a terrible offseason. What are your thoughts on the Juan Soto situation right now? And are you believing the rumors that it's Mets Red Sox over Mets Yankees at the moment, Chris?
It kind of took me by surprise, honestly, Rob, when I heard that report from a Yankees beat reporter himself. And you know what?
Yeah.
I know that said beat reporter has gotten things wrong in the past. I believe it's Randy Miller of NJ.com was the one who or not tweeted out, but went on WFan and talked about this situation. I'm a little bit surprised, and I'm a little bit weary to sort of write the Yankees off that easily. Now, this is something that we've said in a lot of our previous hot stoves, right? Does it make sense for the Yankees to go all out for Juan Soto and allocate that large portion of their payroll for one player instead of spreading it out across their roster? And given the situation that they're in financially, and their owner coming out and saying that they are looking to cut payroll, and that 300 plus $1 million each year is not sustainable, to which both of us have already said that that would make more sense for them just to focus their attention elsewhere. So it's kind of, it's kind of a situation where what we said is kind of playing out, right? And for me, I know that a lot of other people are talking about Blue Jays, a lot of other people are talking about the Dodgers, and maybe the Dodgers could still be in sneakily enough, but I really don't buy it. We knew the top three players for the Juan Soto sweepstakes were going to be the Mets, the Yankees, and I was very adamant from the start about the Boston Red Sox being that third team in on Juan Soto. But that figure of $550 million, I don't know where that's coming from, because that is severely undercutting Juan Soto and his next contract. When you talk about teams like the Red Sox and the Mets, who have unconfirmed reports already of $600+ million contracts already out in terms of offerings to Juan Soto, if you are the Yankees owner and you're that front office, that wouldn't inspire a lot of confidence to, one, your organization and your players, but also your fan base, that, you're not putting your best foot forward in terms of retaining that player that, alongside Aaron Judge, was one of the best 1-2 combos in the big leagues, especially in the regular season last season. So it doesn't shock me, because we kind of knew that this was going to play out, right? With the Yankees kind of potentially walking if the price point gets too high. But $550 million, if that is indeed, and again, we haven't heard anything from Jeff Passan, right, on a figure. And really, that's the benchmark of these reports. You kind of start to be like, okay, this is legit. Randy Miller, I'm not going to discredit his work. I'm not going to discredit the work of any other beat reporter. But until it comes from Jeff Passan, I kind of have a hard time believing it. But if that $550 million mark is true, or anywhere around there, and they're not willing to go up to $600 million, that's a very big eye opener. That's a very big eye opener to me. And honestly, all along, I said it. You can rewind the tapes from our Mets hot stoves. I knew the biggest threat to the Mets for Juan Soto was going to be the Boston Red Sox. Situationally, culturally, like, everything just makes sense about Boston and that organization. There's ties to David Ortiz. There were some rumors that Juan Soto's, favorite team growing up was the Boston Red Sox. All that aside, I still hold true to the fact that if money is the biggest factor driving this decision, nobody, not even the Boston Red Sox, are going to outbid the New York Mets. But you have to wonder, with Juan Soto, how much does everything else matter to him, right? How much does the legacy matter to him? How much does, the ties of David Ortiz matter to him? That's stuff that we can't really account for here as fans talking about this situation. But I'm very confident, if money is the sole factor, the New York Mets are not going to be outbid for Juan Soto. That's the fact.
Yeah, and I'm gonna give you a ton of credit because you brought up the Red Sox. I think probably in like episode 5 when we talked about Juan Soto and thoroughly, and I think it's a big black eye. I think it's an embarrassment if the Yankees don't at least try to go to 600 million. If those reports are true that they're not going to go over 550 million and they had opt-outs, it just shows you how worried Hal Sternberger is having Aaron Judge, Giancarlo Stanton, and Juan Soto $100 million of their payroll, if not more, depending on, bonuses and, if they hit certain marks. That should be concerning because, and that's why Yankee fans are extremely quiet this offseason. Maybe it's a quiet confidence, and I said this before, but I don't think it is, because they wouldn't shut up about how Juan Soto loves the Yankees and he's not leaving there. So when the season was over in the World Series and they got embarrassed in the World Series, that, they can live without Juan Soto. You haven't made the World Series since 2009, and since Stanton and Judge have been the main focus in your lineup, the two stars of your team, you didn't make the World Series until Juan Soto got there. So to think that you can automatically just get back to it without Juan Soto, regardless of who you bring into that organization, into that team, there's a lot of holes, and then you hope it fits. So it's very confusing to me why the Yankees won't do it. But look, this ain't a Yankee show. Let them worry about that, right? It's a factor because there's going to be a ton of pressure if wherever Juan Soto goes, the Red Sox or the Mets, there's going to be a big time pressure on the Yankees getting a Pete Alonso, getting another bigger name because you lost Juan Soto. And I think it's a bigger blunder and bigger embarrassment if the Red Sox get Juan Soto. You cannot lose Juan Soto to a division rival, right? We talked about it with Zach Wheeler with the Mets and the Phillies. Even if the Mets didn't want to give the money to Zach Wheeler and didn't trust his health, you don't let him go to the Phillies, right? That was why we were so upset about it. Not that he wasn't staying with the Mets, but because he went to a division rival that you have to face. That's the problem. And that's why it's confusing to me. Now, all these reports can be wrong. The Yankees could be just blowing smoke up everybody's ass. But I said it from the beginning. I don't think the Yankees are going to – I always felt that it was going to go to 600 million, if not more. And I never felt the Yankees were ever going to go there. That's why I didn't think the Red Sox were going to be that heavily involved as you thought, and that's credit to you. But I always felt like the price tag was going to be over $600 million. And I knew the Mets would be in on it and another team other than the Yankees. And it seems like more and more that it's going to be between the Mets and the Red Sox. Now, we don't think the Mets are going to get outbid here. If it's all about the money, he's going to be a Met. Now, is he just jumping up the price tag little by little, going back and forth, whoever's leaking these rumors, if they're true or not? Because this is a very unique offseason so far because we haven't really heard years, numbers, anything from any team. And that's not a Scott Boras way of doing things. He loves to leak out things to the media. I do wonder if the teams that are involved saying, if you leak these numbers in years, we're walking. And that might be a little harsh coming from teams that really probably need Juan Soto. But I do wonder, why haven't you heard any years and numbers from official reporters like Jeff Passan or a Mets beat reporter that's in the know? Why do you think that, Chris? Why do you think not even anything is leaked from any team number-wise and year-wise?
I have no idea. It's a little bit of a unique circumstance given him being only 26 years old. So you have a wide range of possible years to give out, anywhere between 12 to 14 years. I think 15 years is pretty excessive. I have no doubt in my mind if a team needed to give that 15th year just to secure Juan Soto, they would do it. But that seems a little bit excessive to pay Juan Soto when he's 41 years old. But just because he's so young right now and he's eligible for this mega contract, I think that's exactly why we're not hearing the years. We're hearing total value. And that's great and all. We can sit here, talk about 620, 650, 675, even 700. But how many years are we like realistically talking about? What is the AAV? That's what everyone wants to know. And I'm not really sure where this report came from. I was kind of scrolling my X timeline. First of all, we have to just say this loud and clear. There's a lot of wannabe reporters out there on a lot of social media sites, and you guys need to be careful with who you listen to and all these reports because we saw a wave of fake reporters coming out of the woodworks and saying, "Oh, Soto's going to Boston. Just wait on it for it to happen." Where's that coming from? You know what I mean? And it's good. That's good that the Mets and really the Red Sox, because I think that a lot of those reports are just kind of, coming out of people's butts at this point around the Red Sox. But even the Mets, we haven't heard anything coming from Mets camp surrounding this deal, which is awesome. The more close to home that the Mets are playing their cards in this situation, the better. And I know that makes a lot of people nervous. It makes a lot of Mets fans nervous. Hell, it makes me nervous too, not hearing anything from these reporters surrounding the Mets and their true interest. We know the Mets are interested, and as long as they keep their cards close to them, good things will happen. So, you know what? At this point, it's a waiting game, but I think you and myself, Rob, agreed that the end is near, right? In terms of when this is going to be inked and when they're going to put pen to the paper. It could be this week. It could be this week because, we've been hearing rumors, and now it's starting to feel like it's heating up a little bit. It's starting to feel like the stove is getting increasingly hot. And, I just kind of have that feeling And that thought in the back of my head, a couple days ago, I went out on a limb saying maybe we see the end of this come Saturday, which was yesterday. That was a little bit generous of me. I
Yeah.
have to admit, that was a little bit generous of me. But this week, midweek, maybe a couple of more offers go against each other between the Mets and the Red Sox, and maybe a team like, I don't know if the Dodgers are seriously in this thing. I find it hard to believe that the Dodgers are seriously in these sweepstakes, but you never know. Couple more offer sheets come in, and it's time to make a decision. Because again, as we'll get into here in just a second, the winter meetings are coming up very soon. Very soon. And that's when I think that a lot of other moves, regardless of what if Juan Soto signs or not, they're gonna start to happen because that snowball has to get going eventually. And I think that's when it's gonna happen is the winter meeting. So I want to give this thing a couple more days. I'm kind of losing patience. When I take a look at other sports and the free agent signings and how they're going, whether it's, football in the NFL, whether it's basketball in the NBA, it's like top guys sign almost day of free agency starting. And I wish that baseball was able to get to a spot where that could be the same case. And I understand why it's not. And situationally, in terms of the actual process, there's a lot of things that would have to happen to sort of make this process right because it's not exciting for us fans, right? It's not exciting for us to have to come on here, make videos, and talk about rumors instead of cold hard facts, right? It's not easy, let me tell you. So I wish the
Yep.
process was different. I'm losing patience, but I think the end is really near, and I think that Juan Soto signs by the end of this week at the very minimum.
Yep, I agree. I just want to give a shout out to Henry for the super chat. He says, calling it out, Red Sox are being used in order to drive up the price for the Yankees. Dodgers will bow out. Blue Jays are out, and it'll be a bidding war against three teams: Yankees, Sox, and Mets. If the Red Sox are being used to get the Yankees back involved to uncomfortable numbers, then the Mets are heavy favorites, in my opinion. If that's the case, to be quite honest, and Henry, thank you for the super chat, by the way. Yeah, if that's the case, then the Yankees are gonna just try to save face from their fans and just look like they're trying when they're really not going to want to sign Juan Soto at that price in total amount of money and years. And if the Red Sox are being used in that case to bring the Yankees back into the fold, then I think the Mets are the heavy favorites if that's the scenario that pans out. And overall, with the entire discussion about Juan Soto, there's a couple of people talking about, are you worried about his defensive capabilities? Well, the Padres traded for him. They didn't care. The Yankees traded for him. They didn't care. You're not paying a guy for his glove. If that's the case, the best defensive player in baseball is probably betting 180 right now. Do you want to give him $500 million because he has a good glove? No, you don't, right? You pay guys because of the bat. Baseball, the highest amounts of money is because they can put the bat to the ball, and their offensive numbers are very damn good, right? Ohtani got a tremendous amount of money because he can hit. Even when he couldn't pitch, he got a tremendous amount of money, and the Dodgers knew that this year, and he got a tremendous amount of money. Look at all the players that aren't very good defensively or above average or below average, getting big deals because they can hit 35 home runs, bat 270, hit 90 plus RBIs. That's what you're paying Juan Soto for. And there's a reason why 2 out of the 3 teams he's been with, one made the World Series and won it, and last year helped them basically almost single-handedly get to the World Series. The guy is a dynamic player. This guy is a winner. This guy performs in the biggest moments. We talk about the Mets just coming up short from Game 6 of the NLCS. You know why? Because they were just missing that next piece, right? We could talk about the pitching. They were missing that. But maybe if it was a big-time pitcher we had, maybe it would have got us over the hump. Maybe if it was Juan Soto in that lineup, maybe that big hit would have came earlier when we had opportunities in Game 6 and didn't let the Dodgers take over that game, right? A lot of little things like that, right? That's the important thing that Juan Soto brings to any team he will be on. And that's why you pay him that tremendous amount of money. And oh, by the way, he's 26 years old. And any big contract, by the way, even if it is 15 years, I always look at it this way, any big contract, if they give you between 5 and 6 years of all-star caliber level and get you to the promised land, the playoffs, and hopefully World Series, you'll take that. I know there's 10 more years of that contract, but he'll be only 30, 31. And you hope he'll still give you really damn good years for at least another 3-4 years of that 10 more years left on his deal. If he can give you 8 years of Juan Soto out of 15, I think you have to take it, Chris. And I think that's the whole entire thing that you have to look at. You can't look at, 2035 or 2036 when he's just turning 40 years old. I don't think you're gonna worry about it then if he can bring it to the promised land.
The Dodgers aren't worried about that when they're giving out these
Yeah,
contracts. Are the Dodgers
yeah.
worried about that? And their
Nope.
deferrals, are they worried about that when they sign Blake Snell, when they sign Shohei Ohtani? Like, are they worried about that? That's the ultimate goal here. And this is what I always tell people, right? I always tell Mets fans this. I understand that Juan Soto's defense, right? He doesn't have the most incredible speed and he doesn't have the most incredible defense, right? He's probably more so a liability out there than he is an asset. I'm 100% in agreement with that. And honestly, if it comes down to it and you have to stick him at the DH spot, I would do it. I have
Yeah,
no problem doing it. I agree wholeheartedly with you, Rob. You pay him for his bat. And the reason you do so is because if you want to get over the hump and you want to get over the Dodgers in the next couple of years, we just made an NLCS appearance, right? The only way logically and realistically for us to be satisfied is by going up to the World Series. And
yeah,
who are you going to have to beat to get there? The Dodgers again, perhaps the Braves, maybe the Phillies, etc. Juan Soto does that for you more so than anybody else on the market.
yeah.
He really does. So that's why you pay a guy of that caliber. Now, again, I also see a lot of people panicking too. And I know that I didn't really talk about, and I'm not really sure if you talked about it on your channel. I'm sure you have, but Blake Snell and the recent signing for the Dodgers. Listen, nothing's really happened this offseason so far, minus the Dodgers making a flurry of moves. They re signed Tommy Edman just recently, and they signed Blake Snell. And I get it. It's kind of infuriating to sit back and watch the Mets being quiet while the Dodgers are making these re-signings. And a lot of people are saying, oh, why can't we go and sign, re-sign Manaea while we're at it, while we wait for the Juan Soto sweepstakes to be over. I'm not arguing against that, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But as it pertains to Juan Soto being one-dimensional, I actually got a comment on one of my shorts, I believe that I dropped today, actually, as long of a day as it's been. I've kind of even forgot that I dropped that short on my channel. But talking about, someone said Juan Soto's a one-dimensional player. You know what? I mean, I don't necessarily agree with that because I think that he's multi-dimensional just with his bat. But if you're talking about the tools of it all, okay, fine. Offense is his greatest strength, and that might be it, right? Well, that's what the Mets need. That one dimension that he possesses is everything the New York Mets lineup needs to compete with a powerhouse lineup like the Dodgers. So sign me up. That is not scaring me at all. And again, today's MLB, whether it's Juan Soto or whether it's Pete Alonso, who I really do think is going to reset the first base market in terms of getting that top dollar value. And I think, Rob, you could agree with that, whether we think he deserves it or not. These contracts are toppling each other and they're getting larger and larger as the years go by. You can talk about a plethora of different factors for why that is. And whether we agree with it or whether we don't doesn't quite matter because the only fact is that it's happening. So, to sit here and tell me that $700 million is too much or $650 million is already too much. That could be the case. But one, it's not our money at the end of the day. It's Steve Cohen's money, right? And he's already shown that he is going to spend that money to build a sustainable winner. And if that's the case, Juan Soto, as Rob just mentioned, is the first piece of that puzzle in terms of building a sustainable winner. That's the key word, sustainable. The first 7, 8, 9 years of that contract, whether it's 12, 13, 14 years, he's going to be a powerhouse in the middle of your lineup. And you pair him with a guy like Pete Alonso. I've been very adamant. If Juan Soto's on board, you go and get Pete Alonso back in the middle of this lineup. I don't care how, unreasonable everyone thinks it is. The Mets have the money to do it. I'm sorry the Mets have the money to do it. And we'll talk about that here in just a second. I'm sure we'll get to Pete Alonso because I've also heard some reports talking about the Boston Red Sox potentially being in play for Pete Alonso, which makes me scratch my head just a little bit. But no, Rob, as a roundabout answer, I don't care if he's one-dimensional. You go ahead and you do it because if you want to get over the hump and get over the Dodgers, this is what's going to need to happen. It's just plain and simple.
Correct. And Explosive talked about we haven't talked about a plan B. We have. Uh, I believe it was episode 2, but double check the podcast episodes. I believe it's episode 2 where we talk about a plan B if we don't get Juan Soto. There is a plan B. There's a very good plan B and plan C. To be quite honest with you, it's not Soto or bust like the Yankees kind of ended up with Soto or bust. The Mets can have a really good offseason without Soto. It's just Soto is the guy you want. All right, let's get to the second topic here. Blake Snell is off the board. We know that. Again, I was not a big fan of Blake Snell. I don't trust him. I don't like 5-inning pitchers who would do everything he can just to throw 5 innings and come out of the game. I think that you need to heavily work on your bullpen every time you throw in the ace. And Blake Snell would have been the ace of the staff if you signed him. And I don't like having an ace that basically doesn't want to go 5 innings past the 5th inning. And now you got to worry about you got to have your bullpen ready when your ace is on the mound. My idea of an ace on the mound is somebody that can go at least 6 innings most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time to salvage your bullpen. I don't feel like Blake Snell does that enough. And that's why I would not want to give him the money that he got from the Dodgers, even though there's deferrals in there and bonuses and all that craziness. But obviously, Manaea is the smaller of these two guys that we're talking about here than Burns and Fried. And Chris, I know you're a big proponent of Max Fried, where I'm really not. You're right about the innings. I think this is a guy that is going to be breaking down over the next couple of years. And the big reason why I don't think the Braves even are taking a second look at him, to be quite honest with you. I think the Braves will love to bring him back. Maybe the price range is too much, but we thought he was going to go to the Dodgers, and Blake Snell went there. So where is Fried going to go now? I think it's the Mets probably are leaning towards Burns, but, I think Manaea, I don't think the Mets are going to give him 4 years. I think it's 3, maybe with a vested option. Burns is probably going to be 8 to 10 years. Fried, I'm hoping 4 years if the Mets do get him. I don't want more than 4 years, but he's probably going to get a 5th year most likely. And this is where the Mets run into a problem here. Manaea was basically your ace. He pitched like an ace. There might be a team willing to give a guaranteed 4th year. What are your thoughts on these 3 guys that I mentioned right now that Blake Snell is off the market now? Obviously, Burns is probably the obvious choice, but if you have to be realistic and understand where the Mets are at this point, where are you going to go? Because it feels like you would probably need 2 out of the 3, don't you think?
Yeah, so first and foremost, the whole Juan Soto situation, I know that a lot of people are sweating the pitching aspect of it. Juan Soto has nothing to do with the pitching. The Mets are going to get pitching. Like, whether Juan Soto joins this team or not, the Mets will cover their bases in terms of the rotation. So I don't view those as hand in hand. Second of all, I know a lot of Mets fans did not want Blake Snell, but if the Mets ended up with Blake Snell, I would not have complained at all. If they signed him to the same contract that the Dodgers just did, I would not have complained at all. But I know that a lot of Mets fans didn't want Blake Snell to see as many Mets fans as I did complaining about that deal, about why the Mets didn't do their due diligence on Blake Snell, kind of makes me just kind of confused because I'm like, well, I thought that the majority of Mets fans didn't want him in the first place. So why are we complaining? The guys that we all wanted and we still want are still on the board. But anywho, yes, I like Max Fried. I hear you on the 4 years. If it takes 5, I'm still doing it. Corbin Burns is going to take probably 7, perhaps even 8, depending on if there's any options that he's willing to take on there, whether it be a player option or a club option. These pitching contracts get kind of, I guess they're a little bit different than the position player contracts because for position players, I feel like, if you have a mega deal like 12, 13 years, there's a club option after the third or fourth year to get out of it. And you don't really see that kind of protection for the pitchers. At least I don't necessarily, but I don't see that being the case for a guy that's already 30, going on 31 years old in the prime of his career, coming off of a season like he did, even given the strikeout rate per nine, I understand is declining. A lot of people have brought that to my attention, and I understand that. But even with that being the case, let's not make any mistake about it. Corbin Burnes is still an ace, and he will be an ace for the next 3, 4, 5 years. And I really do think even if you give him a 7-year deal, 8-year deal, the last 2 or 3 years, he's definitely going to be at the worst a mid-rotation type pitcher for you. So I think that contract will be as worth it as any for any pitcher on this market. But for me, where it starts, Rob, if I had an ideal situation and David Stearns, I told him this is what plan A should be, I would say just go ahead and re-sign Sean Manaea up front. And that's exactly where I would start. You can get Sean Manaea, lock him up into the rotation, and you get a realistic outlook of where he will stand in your rotation going into 2025. Now, it gets a little bit more difficult because the Yusei Kikuchi contract, he just got $21 million from the Angels, right?
Yep.
Sean Manaea's market, realistically for me, was starting out at around 17, 18, maybe 19. And given the type of season that he just had, and given the market and what it's set at now, that Yusei Kikuchi got $21 million per for 3 years from the Angels, there's no doubt in my mind that Boris and Manaea are going to be looking for 2021 minimum. So that changes the ball game a little bit, but I think that it's a no-brainer. Especially knowing that Sean Manaea likes to pitch in New York. He's been on record with saying that he had a very successful bounce back season in a Mets uniform. I think you have to start with re-signing Manaea, and then you can pivot to one of the aces. Ideally, Manaea signs before the winter meetings, and all winter meetings long, you can just focus on either Burnes, Fried, or whoever else they like on this market. But that's kind of the plan that I would set in place if I was this Mets front office right now.
Yeah, and with Corbin Burnes, I wanted Corbin Burnes from the start, but more and more I think about it. I don't know if Stearns is very comfortable giving long-term deals, big long-term deals to start and pitching, especially the way they break down. And you talked about Corbin Burnes, strikeout per nine has been down, percentage has been down over the last couple of seasons, and it's getting worse per year. It's a little worrisome. But again, if he's still getting people out, I don't care if it's strikeouts or contact. It doesn't really matter to me. If he's pitching more to contact to stay later in the game to keep his pitch count down, then who cares? I don't care. As long as he gets the guy out. It's not like his strikeout rate went down and his ERA went way up. So I'm not too worried about that. But the thing with Stearns, I don't think he's going to pay Corbin Burnes. I know he knows a lot about him. Obviously, he was with him with the Brewers. I don't think he's going to go to that. Maybe he'll go 7 years, maybe pushing 8. I don't think he's going further than that. And I keep on saying this. I've been saying this on my channel for a while. I think the Mets are going to trade for a starting pitcher, a big-time starting pitcher. If that's Luis Castillo, Garrett Crochet, they're going to do that. And, funny thing, Joe DeMaio was on with Sal Licata on the WFN Daily podcast. And I listened to it today while I was driving home from work. He said, Joe DeMaio, this isn't, a bullshit reporter. This is Joe DeMaio, who does top 30 prospects, who is in the know, who is a really good reporter. He said this. He said that he believes that between Jet Williams, Luisano Acuna, and Ronnie Mauricio, and maybe a couple of others, there's too much traffic in this middle infield. Right, Mauricio is still rehabbing. I just found out. Joe DeMaio said that Ronnie Mauricio, for anybody who asked that question in the comments, Ronnie Mauricio had cleanup surgery where he had the surgery in his ACL. There was a lot of scar tissue, and that's why it's taken him longer to get back into baseball activity, because he had a cleanup surgery for that scar tissue around the ACL. Just for everybody, for FYI, for everybody. So Acuna, Williams, and Mauricio, there's basically one spot, and that's second base. At some point, you have to make a decision. Now, you would hope to keep 2 of those guys, one who's going to be your second baseman, if Jeff McNeil is not around, but if Jeff McNeil is probably going to be here, 2 of those guys are going to be in the minors and one's going to be on the bench. I still believe that David Stearns, as this year was, that's why he didn't trade no big prospects during the season this year or in the offseason last year. It was an evaluation year for these prospects. I think he knows who he likes and who he doesn't. And would I be shocked if Acuna gets traded? No. Would I be shocked if Jet Williams gets traded? No. Mauricio? No. I think there's going to be a combination where you're going to see one of those guys in a trade package for one of the pitchers I just mentioned. That's why I think Shomania is more likely than not going. I think he's going to be a Met. I think what he did with the Mets this year, I think you might get a tiny discount, not a lot, but a tiny discount. He's going to get more than Kikuchi, right? Kikuchi got basically a little bit, got the qualifying offer basically for 3 years. Manaea is probably going to get between $23 and $25 million, you would think, just based on his production this year. I think the Mets will sign Sean Manaea. Max Fried, I don't think it's an option. I think if you sign Manaea, I think the lefties, I don't think he wants more lefties in it. I mean, I could be wrong, but I don't think he does. So I think Max Fried would be out. I think you're going to see Garrett Crochet and Luis Castillo on the Mets. I think the winter meetings is a big moment for the New York Mets when it comes to trade rumors. I think you're going to hear a lot more over the next couple of days, and it makes the most sense. And the reason why I say that, with Luis Castillo, he's already got a contract, right? You don't have to restructure anything. You don't have to extend him. You don't have to worry about him going to free agency. He's got a contract, right? And it's a lot less than what you would pay Burns. It's probably similar to Fried, and Luis Castillo is a workhorse and a very damn good pitcher. And you don't have to worry about 7-10 years of Burns. You already got that kind. With Garrett Crochet, he's younger than all of them. And yeah, he's had 1 year as a starter, but he had 30 games. And that's where I think it's going to be a big eye-opener for a lot of people. Make sure, guys, that it's more likely the Mets will trade for Garrett Crochet or Luis Castillo than signing Corbin Burns. And that was what Joe DeMaio said on one of the podcasts the other day. And I just happened to listen to it today. And it was eye-opening to me because that's what I was talking about. And to have an actual good reporter talk about it tells me that it's more likely that the trade route for a top-line starter is more likely than a top-line free agent signing for the New York Mets, Chris.
You don't think both would be the case?
I find that I don't think it would be Burns and like Luis Castillo, but
Definitely not. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
Definitely not.
I think I could see like a Manaea and like a yeah.
Bueller, with Walker Bueller, I like Walker Bueller a lot as a fill-in.
If you do Manaea, Bueller, and one of the big time free agents, either Burns or trade for a Crochet or a Luis Castillo, I'm all set. I'm ready to go. I think that's a really good rotation right there. So I would go that route. I think it's safer to go that route because everybody just thinks you could just spend a ton of money and keep all the prospects. What do you gain from that? You don't gain much. All you gain from keeping them is just making them lose more value. Do you know how many teams around the league didn't like what they saw with injuries and production from the Mets' top middle infielders? Like, that's concerning. That loses value to other teams. You can't keep on waiting year by year where these guys are stuck in the minors and lose value. Even if they're very good in the minors, you're wasting years away. And I just don't really like that when it comes to keeping all these guys around because there's no room for them. You have to pick and choose with somebody.
So I see a comment here from a Mariners fan. I believe Drew is in your chat asking what we would even consider, right, for a trade from the Mets going back to Seattle in a potential Luis Castillo trade. Now, you and I both did our projections in terms of hypothetical trade packages for a guy like Garrett Crochet, and we also received a lot of pushback, especially from me, when I included Ronnie Mauricio's name in said trade, and I included who else did I include? I included Jet Williams in the trade because again, you're not getting these guys unless you're overpaying just a little bit in terms of the prospect capital coming back. And so if I know what I know about Mets fans at this very given moment, just based off of the feedback that I got from the hypothetical trades that we kind of pushed out there, if you don't want to give those guys up for a guy like Garrett Crochet, right? Then the Mariners are definitely not going to be taking that kind of package for a guy like Luis Castillo. You're going to have to up the price point for a guy like Luis Castillo. And I understand the contract and I get that, maybe it could even out because Luis Castillo is already under contract. The Mets could eat some of that money and they could just take that salary relief off of the Mariners' shoulders. But again, a guy like Luis Castillo's caliber does not come around often enough. And even given, the Mets or anybody else taking on that contract, you're still going to have to part ways with 2 top 10 prospects and maybe a major league player and a guy like a lot of people want to throw out Jeff McNeil. I'm just preparing Mets fans for that conversation because we can't talk about a guy like Luis Castillo and then expect to give the Mariners pennies on the dollar for a return. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear about that. But in terms of your question, Drew, it took me a minute to at least think of a hypothetical trade to put out for Garrett Crochet. So maybe that'll be one of my next videos here this week. Just a little bit of a spoiler alert. Maybe Rob and I will come back on the next stream and we'll do a Garrett Crochet discussion 2.0 for Luis Castillo for both of our trade packages.
Yeah, it'll be up tomorrow. I guarantee you that. You just gave me an idea. Well, here's the issue, Chris. With what you said, right? I think the Garrett Crochet, you got to give up a lot, right? With Luis Castillo, why are the Mariners trading Luis Castillo? Right? They got one of the best pitching rotations in baseball. People are talking about Pete Alonso going to Seattle or them signing a big free agent position player wise to bring some offense that desperately is needed by the Mariners. Why are they trading Luis Castillo? Because they're trying to get some offense by shedding payroll, getting rid of their strength, which is pitching. I don't think you're going to have to give up 2 prospects and a major leaguer. I think you have to give up 1 top prospect and a major leaguer. And the reason why I say now, again, there's going to be competition. So that might drive up the price a tad. But I tell you right now, if you throw the number 1 prospect in the Mets system, right? Let me just put that right. Let's put Jet Williams. What is he? The number 2 prospect, if I'm not mistaken, 3 prospect, whatever it was. Say if you put Jet Williams, Jeff McNeil, and a lower level prospect. Say some single A guy, maybe a pitcher or something like that. Right? How much better are they going to get? I don't think they're going to get 2 top prospects because here's the problem. You got 5 years, $108 million left on Luis Castillo's deal. All that money is coming to the Mets. The Mariners aren't paying any of that. So if the Mets are taking on their entire contract, you are not going to get what you think the Mariners are expecting to get. They know they're going to get a little less back in the overall package if the Mets are going to take on the entire contract. And that's another reason why I think a trade's more likely, because this is something where Garrett Crochet is probably going to get around this number with an extension when you buy out arbitration years and stuff like that. This is probably what you're going to see in a range of what you might pay Garrett Crochet if you trade for him, if you extend him. With Luis Castillo, he's getting $24.15 million over the next 5 years. Well, 4 years. Well, 3 years, actually. 25, 26, 27. And he has to pitch
one vesting option, right?
Yeah, exactly. He has to pitch 180 innings in 2027 to get the $25 million in 2028. So it's basically a 4-year deal worth about close to $85 million or so like that, and the vesting option. So the thing is here is if the Mets are going to take on all that money for Luis Castillo, who is a workhorse, I don't know how much you're going to have to give up. Now, I would throw Jet Williams in there. And, if they're willing to take 1 top prospect, take Jeff McNeil and, they can pay him $50 million. You're saving a lot of money in that boat. And then they can still sign a position player, which they're trying to do, that has big time numbers that can help their offense, right? They're taking away from strength to gain a weakness on the position in the lineup. So that's what I think is going to be very interesting, especially this winter meetings. This is where you're going to hear a lot of trade talks, in my opinion. And that's why I think the Mets are more likely to do a trade, because of the situation the Mariners are in right now. And I think Stearns is going to work very hard on a trade. And Drew, to answer your question, that prolonged a little bit, but I don't think you're going to get as much as you think, right? I think that they're trying to shed payroll to add offense to their lineup that was desperately needed. And if it takes $100 million to sign, say, $150 million to sign Pete Alonso, they might add that, but lose Luis Castillo, which is your strength in your pitching rotation. So that's where I think that can happen. I think you're going to get one top prospect from somebody, and maybe a major league ready guy or a guy who's already in the major leagues. Not much more than that.
Yeah, and you know what? You could be right. You could be right at the end of the day. And we've discussed Luis Castillo's name, I guess, not too much on this channel, because for me personally, I'm kind of even questioning if they're going to let him go to begin with. In this offseason, maybe they wait it out another season, see if they flop again, and then they'll put his name up on the trade block. But the same situation kind of arises for me in that with Garrett Crochet, you're going to have competition with another team like the Red Sox, right? So whether it's Garrett Crochet or whether it's Luis Castillo, a team like the Red Sox, who, they also need pitching just as badly as the Mets do, they're going to be in on these guys as well. So you're not only bidding, or you're not only talking trade, right? Trade talks with the Mariners, you're also engaging in a competition with, I'm sure, a plethora of other teams, but the main one is the Boston Red Sox having 4 top prospects in the top 50 pipeline in all of Major League Baseball, right? So that's a difficult situation within itself. But again, right, if the Red Sox go get Garrett Crochet, maybe they're out on a guy like Luis Castillo, and it opens up the avenue. So that kind of brings me to the question for you, is that if that's the case, who would you rather have in, let's say this is the situation. Sean Manaea re-signs with the Mets. Let's say Walker Buehler takes the prove-it-year deal with the Mets, which, again, there's some rumblings about the Yankees being in on a Walker Buehler. We will revisit that probably when the winter meetings start up, as the moves start to kind of flurry and get on board. But at this moment, who would you rather the Mets pursue via trade? Because I also agree, right, with you, and I guess DeMayo saying this, is that the Mets are definitely in line for a trade. They're in for a re-signing of one of their guys, whether it's Manaea or Severino. I think we'd both rather prioritize Manaea. They're in for another maybe 1 to 2 year deal, Walker Buehler or whoever else it is on a short-term contract, and they're in on one of the top free agents or one of the top trade targets. But if it comes down to Garrett Crochet or Luis Castillo, who would you prefer? I should have saved that as my rapid-fire question. I should have saved that.
Keep it. You can keep that question. You can keep that question.
I'll hold that in my back pocket, and then we'll
That's
answer
a really good
that
question.
and rapid fire time. Okay.
You make me got to think about that. You got make me think a little bit, because you caught me off guard there. I'm like, oh shit, I don't got nothing for you. All right, so we're gonna keep that question for the rapid fire, and I do got one for Chris. It's actually kind of similar too, but he took my question actually, but that's okay, because I'll figure out something really quick. But all right, Pete Alonso discussion. Right, I think the Pete Alonso situation, when it comes to the Mets, it does not involve if the Mets get Juan Soto or not. I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think Juan Soto and Pete Alonso are completely different, in my opinion. I don't think it has anything to do. I think if the Mets sign Juan Soto, I think they're still going to try to sign Pete Alonso to what they feel comfortable contract-wise. And I've said this for a while. I don't think they're going to go past 6 years, maybe pushing 7, maybe a 6-year with a vested option for the 7th year. But I don't think they're going to go much more than that. I think there's a team out there who loses out on Juan Soto, like the Red Sox, like the Yankees, that might push the, save face in the Juan Soto sweepstakes if they lose out on them and get Pete Alonso. Look, I love what Pete Alonso did in the playoffs, and I always talk about this. Like, he had a rough season. Runners in scoring position were very well known that he struggled really badly, but in the playoffs he stepped up. And when you see that, you're like, oh, because if he would have struck out in Milwaukee and the Mets lose 2-0, I don't think there'd be more Met fans not wanting Pete Alonso than wanted him. And listen, that home run changed a lot of people's minds. And listen, I'm one of them. right? For a guy who, was continuing to get on Alonso for a lot of the year, and deservingly so. What he did in the playoffs showed me a lot mentally for Pete Alonso, where I'm not as worried giving him the 6, 7 years anymore than I was probably 3 months ago. I think that if you can get, I would say, half of that contract, the Pete Alonso that we know and what he can do in the playoffs, I say do it. And I'm okay with that, right? Christian Walker is fine. If they go that route and somebody just blows Pete Alonso out of the water with a contract, and I'm not willing to go there, the Mets are not willing to go there. I completely understand that, and I appreciate somebody doing that because I always want to see the players get paid. But man, I would love to see Juan Soto, Pete Alonso in the same lineup. I think what it did for the Yankees lineup and what it did just for the top of the order, it means everything. And it changes the dynamic, regardless of if it's a Starlin Marte batting second or a Brandon Nimmo or, whatever it might be. It's just the dynamic front part of the order. And I think it's going to be very hard for a team to actually go through that first four batters in a lineup if you get Lindor, Soto, Alonso, Nimmo, say, right? Like that's a lineup where you can be like, shit, that's crazy. And I think the dynamic duo, if you can get those guys, the two together, I kind of think it's important for this offseason for the Mets fans' mental capacity and the mental makeup that, I think there's going to be a lot of people very upset if Pete Alonso is not a career Met, because it seems like more Met fans care about the historic numbers of the New York Mets than the actual team awards that we could get. And that's always frustrated me because I don't care if Pete Alonso retires as a New York Met but doesn't have a championship, and we're going to talk about he's the home run leader in New York Mets history. Who gives a shit? I honestly don't care about that. If you're a fan and care about that and don't care about the actual thing that we actually really care about, and that is the jersey on the front, the name on the front of the jersey, and if they have a World Series trophy, if you care about the historical numbers for a franchise, then I don't even know. I'm never going to convince you that Pete Alonso is not worth it. So, in my opinion, bring back Pete Alonso, because the playoffs showed me something mentally, that he can mentally do it with all the pressure that he had throughout the season. So, in my opinion, do I think the Mets are going to sign Pete Alonso? No. I think the number is going to get a little crazy, and I think Stearns is not going to be comfortable doing that, and it's probably going to be at least 7 years, maybe even more. So, Chris, it's rough. It's rough because I want to see Pete Alonso here long term, but I'm not going to cry about it if he's not a career Met. I'm just not, because I don't care about that. If there's a way to make your team better and Pete Alonso's not a part of it, and the Mets win a World Series, am I going to cry about Pete Alonso? No, I'm not, Chris.
Yeah, and this is something where I discussed in one of my, latest videos as well. We took that snippet of the live stream that we talked about, whether it makes sense to bring Juan Soto and Pete Alonso on board. I would personally be a very big fan of that top five. And a lot of people don't realize that Pete Alonso, in his career, in the two playoff appearances that he has under his belt now in both years, 2022 and 2024, he's a 278 hitter with over 1,000 OPS in the playoffs in his career. So again, right, regardless of what he does in the regular season, he has shown up in the playoffs. Let's not, let's not mistake that, right? He has. Go look at the numbers. So I know it's very easy to write him off in that category without actually looking at the numbers, but he has stepped up in both 2022 when the playoffs were cut short to that wild card series, and in 2024 up until the league championship series. Now, that aside, the Mets are going to have a very big issue that they run into, because Pete Alonso is going to be a pivot point for a lot of teams that are in on Juan Soto, perhaps, that strike out on him. I just mentioned earlier in this stream that there's Again, unconfirmed reports, but the Boston Red Sox could be in on him if they don't get Juan Soto, right? They have to figure out Tristan Cassis, what they're going to do with him. He's still young, relatively, I believe 3 years into his career, going on 4, but has not performed. And then the Yankees are the other players for Pete Alonso, right? And we have kind of heard, and now that the Yankees are kind of out on Juan Soto, I wouldn't say they're out on Juan Soto, but that's what the initial reports suggest, right? It would make sense because it's going to take up a little bit over half of what the AAV would be for Juan Soto. Let's just call it 26, 27, maybe even 28 for Pete Alonso. He fills a major need, right, for the Yankees at first base with Rizzo hitting the open market. And it just makes, I guess, sense for him to stay in New York in the cross side of town if they strike out on Juan Soto. So, and the list is not exhaustive to those 2 AL East teams. So the Mets are going to have a problem, not only getting Juan Soto, because my live chat poll is asking you all, how big of threats do you all, as Mets fans, believe the Red Sox are for Juan Soto? But if the Mets have this plan to build this amazing top 5, and I know not a lot of people, but some people disagree. Personally, Francisco Lindor, Mark Vientos, Pete Alonso, Juan Soto, Brandon Nimmo. That scares me. If it doesn't scare you, I'm not really sure what it would take to scare you, because again, that's like a top 3, top 5 in the league outside of the Dodgers, and it ain't number 3. It's not. It's simply not. So that they would have to potentially get into another bidding war for Pete Alonso. So I agree it's a little bit far-fetched, but can you just imagine if that were to happen? You already said that you think he's getting $200 million, don't you?
Pete Alonso?
Pete Alonso? Yeah.
I think somebody's going to give it to him. If it's the Cubs, which I still look, the Cubs want Pete Alonso for 3 years now. It's been widely known that the Cubs want him. I think that it's going to come to a point where there's going to be a desperate team out there, and say the Cubs might lose out on a couple of guys they might have wanted and couldn't get, and now Cubs fans are really pissed off, and the owners are going to budge a little bit. And it might not just be the Cubs; it might be another team. I think the Yankees might find themselves desperate, and a lot of people think that the Yankees, Pete Alonso don't fit. He fits like a glove. If they lose out on Juan Soto, that's a situation where now you're going to play Dominguez in center field, and you're going to throw Judge back to right field. They don't have a left fielder, basically. They don't have a second baseman. Jazz Chisholm is not really a third baseman. So where are they going here? And that's why they might have to jump to Pete Alonso and might have to, bite the bullet and pay $200 million to Pete Alonso just to get some more offense in there and help, fill out the roster a little bit. And that's the issue that I think some teams are going to fall into, why I think the Mets are going to get priced out of Pete Alonso. I know that's crazy to say with Steve Cohen, but I've said this for a long time. I think the number that was talked about that they offered Pete Alonso, if that's factual, I don't think they're going to go much higher than that. Maybe another $10, $15 million for what he did in the playoffs, an extra year, but not much more than that. And I wouldn't go much more than that. And it might piss off some people, but at some point, you got to keep a limit. And I think the Mets are more focused on getting younger and getting better with age-wise with younger players as well. And I don't know if Pete Alonso fits into that mold anymore. I know that sucks to say, but I don't think the Mets are going to give him 7 or 8 years, $200 million. I just find it hard to believe.
But I also, on the flip side, find it hard to believe that they're going to shift Mark Vientos into that first base role. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think that's in the cards. So it's either Christian Walker or a stopgap guy like Carlos Santana. I do not think Mark Vientos is going to play first base. I simply don't. And so you know what? If Pete Alonso, as we have mentioned and talked about on this podcast, on our streams all season long, going back into the regular season, all playoffs long, all these interviews and press conferences that we saw Pete Alonso have about how he's so committed to the New York Mets. If you're David Stearns and Steve Cohen and you approach Boris and Pete and say, listen, we just got Juan Soto in this scenario, right? We just got Juan Soto, and we would love for you to come back and build a powerhouse top 5, but we need you to take deferred money to win now. Do you think they do it?
Well, If that can be on the table, I'll sign Pete Alonso tomorrow. Right? The Dodgers have been, you know, hiding in, dug out holes to get to the other side of the world with avoiding the luxury tax numbers because of all the deferred money. If the Mets can do that with Pete Alonso, I'm all on board. If that saves a ton of money on the overall payroll, let's do it. I sign on the dotted line today. But I don't think Pete Alonso is going to do that. And that's what I said when people say, oh, Pete Alonso wants to be a Met. He loves it here. Not enough, because he would either took that deal that was very fair that the Mets offered him, or give a little bit of a discount like, his crosstown rival Aaron Judge did to still become a Yankee. And I don't think Pete Alonso's given the Mets a discount. So all that bullshit that he talked about was a lie. It's just a fact. And sorry, that might piss all the Met fans off, but it's a fact. If you really want to be here, I'm not saying give hundreds of millions of dollars, but if you give $10 to $15 million overall contract, I think the Mets would be willing to go there. Now, will he be taking deferred money? I'd love that. That would be extremely helpful for the Mets to get another big time pitcher in here. So, that these winter meetings, and leading up to this next topic, the winter meetings are going to be awesome, because I think there's going to be big time trades. I think we're going to probably hear about one or two big signings, not named Juan Soto, because we all think he's going to be, me and you think he's going to be signed prior to the winter meetings. I think the Mets are going to be very active this winter meetings. I think you're going to hear a trade. If it's going to be for a starting pitcher or not, I don't know. But I think the Mets are going to make a trade that is going to better this team. Maybe it's a trade for the bullpen. Maybe it's a trade for a starting pitcher that we talked about. I think it's extremely possible the Mets are lined up, focused, especially if they get Juan Soto. They're going to be the talk of the winter meetings, and this is the year of Steve Cohen. He was waiting for this year, preparing for this year. I don't think Steve Cohen's going to be denied. Whatever he's able to get by his own means, he will. And Chris, I want to get your thoughts on this winter meetings preview, which is a week away. It's on the 8th, next Sunday. It starts the winter meetings. What is your expectations for the Mets? And what is your expectation on the activity level of the winter meetings with trades or free agent signings?
I think it's gonna be quick. And therefore, I'm not sure about your schedule, but I will be going live, and if you would like to join me, we are going live together on another Mets Hot Stove, and we'd love everybody to come join us, because I think it's going to go quick, right? I'm sure we're going to go live. I mean, our schedule is probably open, I would say, for the winter meetings, because we want to give you all the content, and we want to be here to talk about all these signings, because it's been a boring offseason so far. For every other team not named the Los Angeles Dodgers, it has been a boring offseason. So I think as soon as the winter meetings start, it's going to take off with the snap of a finger, just like that. Two things that I expect. I really do think the Mets are going to be aggressive in terms of bringing Sean Manaea back. I think that's first and foremost. But a bold prediction, as I just asked you the question, I do think the Mets, in noticing the way that the Dodgers are wheeling and dealing these past couple of off seasons, the Mets are going to start deploying this deferred money crap that we have been seeing the Dodgers do. And you know what? It's a smart tactic. They got around the rule book, they found a loophole, and everyone now knows about it. Now, again, you have to be willing to mortgage a little bit of your future in that scenario. And I don't think the Mets are going to do it to the same degree the Dodgers have done so already, because the Dodgers have already reaped the benefits of doing so in terms of getting that World Series, right? They've already done that. So I think the Mets are going to start utilizing that tactic. I think in order to compete with the Dodgers, you have to. You have to. There's no way around it. If that precedent is already set from the defending World Series champions, in order to build a roster that's even in the same atmosphere as theirs, you have to play that same game and just start deploying the deferred money. And I think that that's my bold prediction for the Mets this winter meetings, is that we will see Obviously, not via trade, right? Because the contract for a trade is already what the contract's going to be, unless it's for a guy like Garrett Crochet, where you can go ahead and give him that extension, and perhaps he takes the deferred money, perhaps not. And that's another thing, is that these players, they have to agree to this deferred money. It's not
Yes.
like teams can go and just say, hey, we're going to give you deferred money and you're going to like it. They have
Yeah.
to actually agree. And I think that some people still think that's the case. Like Blake Snell had to agree to take deferred money because
Yes.
he wants to win, clearly. Same thing with Shohei Ohtani last season. If you can sell a player that you are very committed to winning now, and we might even see it with Juan Soto. It's not out of the question where we see some of Juan Soto's contract being deferred. That's my bold prediction for the New York Mets in these winter meetings.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very active winter meetings for the New York Mets. And I do think the Mets are going to make a trade. And I've said that for probably a couple of weeks now. I think I don't know if it's going to be the big starting pitcher trade, but I think the Mets are going to make a trade. Maybe it's for a bullpen arm, maybe it's for something else, maybe to loosen up the roster a little bit for a spot for one of our young guys. If it's a McNeil trade where they can shed a little bit of money or just pay that money and get rid of McNeil and set up Acuna for second base or Jet Williams or whoever they might want at second base. I think you're going to see something like that. And I think the Mets are going to go into the winter meetings with the Juan Soto in their back pocket on the roster going into winter meetings. And that leads me to the rapid fire question for Chris. What do you think, or total contract for Juan Soto, years, money, what do you think it's going to be signed on the dotted line for the New York Mets and Juan Soto?
That's so tough. There's such a big range for Juan Soto. My prediction is 14 years, $675 million.
All right,
That's my
so
valuation.
675 divided by 14, that's $48.21 million
Yep.
for the man of the hour, Juan Soto. Okay, that's a very competitive offer. Yeah, that's a nice offer. I do that right now. I think he's the highest paid player, and well, technically, other than Shohei, but he's also a pitcher too. So yeah, $48.21 million, 14 years, 675. I'm on board with that. Let's sign him right now. Let's see if he takes it. That's a good one, Chris. All right, rapid fire time for you, Chris. What do you got?
Yeah, and I always said it was going to take $48 million. I said that last couple of weeks, so I think that that's a very competitive offer. Okay, you already know my rapid fire question for you, Rob. I have let you stew on this and sit on this question for the past 25 minutes or so. If it came down to a situation where the Mets already have Sean Manaea re-signed in this rotation to go alongside David Peterson and Kodai Senga, and they wanted to go the trade route for a starting pitcher, knowing what you know about the contract situations, Garrett Crochet having a couple of years of control left, but wanting his extension and being very adamant that wherever he gets traded, there's going to be immediate extension talks, or already knowing the contract that's been given out to Luis Castillo, who could end up on the trade block, which player would you rather prioritize to put as your co-ace in this rotation for 2025 and beyond next to Kodai Senga? Luis Castillo or Garrett Crochet?
Garrett Crochet, because Ken convinced me that Luis Castillo isn't as good as he used to be, and he's the number 2, number 3 starter. Garrett Crochet is an ace of a staff. Yes, you got to give up prospects, but again, they're prospects. How many more middle infielders do we need? I mean, we might as well start, selling off a few of our middle infielders that are top prospects. At some point, you got to use them as assets, and I think that's what's going to happen. I think I would be shocked if Garrett Crochet is not a Met going into the 2025 season. And he's young. He's under 30. He doesn't have a lot of innings on his arm, which I like a lot more than his age. And he just got dominant stuff, and he's a lefty. And the Mets can extend him for a lot less than what you got to pay Corbin Burns. It's probably going to be in the same range of Max Fried overall contract, I would think, because you're buying out a couple arbitration years. Garrett Crochet over Luis Castillo. I think it's more likely that the Mets will be willing to go get that arm that's younger that is is going to have a higher ceiling than Luis Castillo at this point. If you want Luis Castillo in his 3.64 ERA and take on $100 million, I'd be okay with that. But Garrett Crochet can be an under a 3.1 ERA and lower for the next couple of seasons. And you can get the Buehlers of the world, the Manayas of the world to be at 3.4s or something like that. And, throw in Kodai Senga, throw in David Peterson, maybe Tyler McGill as your 6th or 7th starter, something like that. I think that's a good rotation. So Garrett Crochet is my guy.
Yeah, I don't know. This is such a struggle for me to decipher between these two guys. I don't think it's like a clear cut Garrett Crochet over Luis Castillo because
Okay.
again, you are right 100%. And these are two different scenarios, as Patrick was pointing out in the chat, right? You're eating money for one guy, but you have to, basically part ways with more prospects for the other, presumably, right? And I do agree with you in that sense, going back to the conversation that we just had about 20, 25 minutes ago, about the difference in return for a guy like Luis Castillo versus Garrett Crochet. But you have the provenness already and the track record from Luis Castillo, right? And we said
Right.
what? He was under contract for another 3 or 4 years outside of that
Four.
vesting option, Luis
Four.
Castillo. So he's 31 years old. You're going to be paying him presumably until he's 34, 35. That's also not a bad shake at the end of the day. So I
Agree.
don't think it's a clear cut, Garrett Crochet is the guy. Yes, he's younger, and yes, that's more, I guess that's more preferable if you're the New York Mets. But you know what? If it takes eating money, if it takes also eating the money of Jeff McNeil's contract to send him
Mhm.
over in addition to a prospect, I would do that 100%. I'm fine with either guy. But for me, given the track record and given, knowing what Luis Castillo and the type of pitcher he already is, that might make me a little bit more enticed going down that route than Garrett Crochet. But again, I would not be opposed to either pitcher. I mean, these guys
Yeah.
are the premier cream of the crop type talents to put at the front of your rotation with Senga.
Yeah. I mean, if we wake up tomorrow and Luis Castillo is a Met, am I going to be mad about who they traded? And no, I won't. I think we'd be okay with that. You know what? You could do a lot worse. And you know what? For a guy who has a 3.60 ERA and probably could be better on a better team, and you only got to pay him 86 million dollars over the next 4 years with a vested option for a fifth, I think it's a bargain. And I think he'll be better on a better team and with a better, with a better overall team. I think it could help Luis Castillo. But again, if you're going into the season with Luis Castillo or Garrett Crochet, I think your rotation is going to be ready to go going into the 2025 season. And obviously that involves Manaya, probably a Bueller. You already got David Peterson in there. Hopefully a healthy Kodai Senga. You're going with probably a 5-6 man rotation that you can be very comfortable with. And again, you don't need great starter pitching guys. The Dodgers won the World Series who basically put, they use Elmer's glue to get that rotation together. They were throwing bullpen games in the World Series, for crying out loud. You need quality pitching throughout the season, and you need one or two guys to step up in the postseason. That's it. That's all you need. That's all you need. Two guys to step up in the postseason and quality starters overall to get you through a season and give you quality starts throughout the year. That's where you got to go, guys. So, guys, episode 9 of the Mets Hot Stove is in the books. It is the month of December. It is the month of the winter meetings. And hopefully by the end of this week, we know where Juan Soto goes so we can get that out of our system and focus on the other parts of the New York Mets roster that needs a lot of tender love and care, so to speak, to get this roster going for 2025. So, Chris, final thoughts and let everybody know what's going on with your channel, buddy.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Super excited again. I don't have my microphone, so I hope the audio is okay for you all. Trying to get this stream in here to end the week. I will be home on Tuesday, so we'll be doing regular live streams, regular videos as the scheduled programming allows on Tuesday, starting Tuesday. But again, if anything happens between now and then, which I don't foresee happening tomorrow, we got you guys covered. Don't worry. But again, subscribe to the channel. Make sure you smash those thumbs up buttons on this stream, on my channel, on Rob's channel. I appreciate everyone that voted in my live chat poll. Again, last couple of seconds to do so and participate in that. But again, subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. We're going to be here with you all winter meetings long. Our regular scheduled Mets Hot Stove Lives, our regular videos dropping on our channel. But guess what? If there is news to be talked about, don't rule out an emergency live stream from Rob and myself, because we will be on here to break some news. So make sure to also hit the notifications buttons on our YouTubes, because you never know when we're going to go live. It could be out of the blue if some unexpected news drops. So I appreciate you all. Thank you for the support. It means a lot. Just for you all being here, interacting with us. We always like to hear what you all have to say in the comments, and it's awesome interacting with you all. Let's go Mets, and let's hope for some good news on the Soto sweepstakes, and then the rest of the roster will fill out. Don't panic, Mets fans. Trust in Stearns.
Absolutely. And by the way, guys, the key date today, draft picks are assigned, and that is a competitive balance. Draft picks that are assigned for teams in the bottom 10 in revenue. That's where they get where market size, they pick the draft picks all around that. So we'll find out, I think, later today. Just watch MLB Network. You'll have a better understanding of where those draft picks are going to go in the underperforming revenue of the top 10 teams with below the revenue, the cheap teams, basically. So with that said, guys, thank you for watching Mets Hot Stove episode 9. Hit that like button, guys. Hit that subscribe button. Again, MLB Winter Meetings in a week. We're going to be going live if anything breaks. And I'm probably going to do with Chris or others MLB Winter Meetings live, just to get everybody juices flowing a little bit about the winter meetings. With that said, everybody have a great night. Enjoy the rest of your football Sunday, guys. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets, and we'll see you next time, guys. Have a great night.
Go Mets.
In the dead of night, full of echo. Concrete jungle, dreams bust to grow. Mets in the air, chase glory, no fear. Broken bats, but hearts steer clear. OMG, the chaos, what a scene.